Hello, and welcome to another edition of Exclusive Interview, coming to you from the studios of 84 TV Radio, Abuja, Nigeria. My name is Stanley Bentu. Now, for many years, Nigeria has committed to all kinds of international documents that guarantees women at least 30% of appointive positions when it comes to public policy. But coming back home, we've not exactly done very well in establishing policies that would guarantee that these women have those opportunities. Now, if it's men that are holding these positions that could have gone to women, then surely they must have a role in making sure that women have a seat at the table when it comes to decision-making processes. Let's have a look at this report.
Ending all discrimination against women and girls is not only a basic human right, it is crucial for a sustainable future. It's proven that empowering women and girls helps economic growth and development. Gender equality is central to development, and though remarkable progress has been made in the past 20 years, Nigeria is still far from the ideal mark. There are more girls in school now compared to 15 years ago, and most regions have reached gender parity in primary education. But although there are more women than ever in the labor market, there are still large inequalities in some regions, with women systematically denied the same work rights as men. Sexual violence and exploitation, the unequal division of unpaid care and domestic work, and discrimination in public office all remain huge barriers. Climate change and disasters continue to have a disproportionate effect on women and children, as do conflict and migration. It is vital to give women equal rights to land and property, sexual and reproductive health, and to technology and the internet. Today, there are more women in public office than ever before, but encouraging more women leaders will help achieve greater gender equality. Today on Exclusive Interview, we speak to Eze INEQUALITY, the Executive Director of the Center for Social Justice, who lays out necessary policies Nigeria must put in place to achieve social justice for women.
Welcome back. I am now joined in the studio by the Director of the Center for Justice Nigeria, and his name is Eze INEQUALITY. You're welcome to the program.
My pleasure.
We're talking about, gender justice and also the participation of women in decision-making levels at whether it's the lower or mid or higher level. And that is something that is almost like a broken record in Nigeria. It seems to be a political sloganism, but the policies that are required to put that in place have not fully been implemented or established. So what are some of the challenges there?
Well, let us start by acknowledging that we live in a patriarchal society where men take the pride of place and dominating the political, policy, religious, cultural, customary, and economic environment. And with that, it reflects and manifests in the domination of the political space where policies and laws are made. So if you are not there at that space where the interests of the various disparate groups are discussed, it's likely your interests won't be catered for, and that's what is happening to the female gender. And so the challenge we have is that we are running a society where politics and getting elected into positions of authority or influence are based on how much money you have. And if you do not have money, it becomes extremely difficult for you to penetrate into the circle. And you can very well know that the face of poverty in Nigeria is a female face. And so that's one of the critical challenges. Then the custom and the culture, the backward culture we have also not accepted women as equals. They've not been given that pride of place, and even our laws have not done enough in terms of the affirmative action principle. Today we have federal character, and which is something I've challenged in the past to say, affirmative action is usually a product of a history, a lived history of marginalization. For instance, the blacks in America came as slaves, dragged, kicking and screaming. They were treated as chattels. So when the affirmative action started in America, there was a history that law and policy held these people down, and others were progressing. But in the Nigerian context of affirmative action, which is based on geopolitical zones and regions, there's no such history at any point in time in Nigeria when a certain section of Nigeria was dragged down, held down by force of law and policy, and others were promoted as to give that opportunity to say, let's give you a special preference now. But in terms of women, there is a history of marginalization in both our traditional societies, even in the modern society, supported by law, supported by policies, supported by custom. So I am one of those who says that we need a gender character affirmative action principle or sections in our constitution as we are amending our constitution. Instead of talking of federal character alone, we must begin to reserve a certain percentage, a minimum of the Beijing 35% affirmative action in elective positions, in appointed positions, in judicial positions, legislative, executive, everywhere, so that we humanize our society. The macho face of the Nigerian society is part of the challenges where there's so much violence, where there is so much mischief, people are stealing money that generations can't finish. I believe that if we introduce more women, they can humanize the political, economic, and social space, and we can begin to perform better.
Now, I'd love to hear more about this gender character proposal that you have, but there is also another problem that we're facing, and that is that even though there's been so much advocacy for women's rights and for promotion of women in decision-making processes, many of these events that happens and these talk shops seem to be largely driven by women, and women are the ones having the conversation, and men don't seem to be part of the conversation to an extent, or to the extent where you feel their presence and to try to gauge their mindsets. Are men being excluded from the conversation? And if so, is it detrimental to the struggle?
I don't want to believe that men are being excluded, because in my organization in the last 1 year, we've been very active in running the Spotlight Initiative, which has a vision to see that all women and girls enjoy their fundamental rights, nobody is discriminated against. And we've been going around the country with these studies, budgeting for sexual and gender-based violence is eradication in 6 states across the geopolitical zones. And many men were participating. But I think, like you did say, it's imperative, if the struggle must go forward, to involve more men, because you cannot clap with one hand. It takes two to tango. So if you are complaining and you're preaching to the choir and the converted, it wouldn't make sense. You need to find out where the sinners, quote and unquote, are. Because if you're living as a wife in a union and they're saying these are your rights, if your husband doesn't get converted, you are going to have a big bruise. You're going to quarrel, maybe lead to separation. So, but the best approach is also for the man himself to be sensitized and to begin to understand, not from the point of view of saying you force it on him, but talk to him in such a way, or sensitize him so that he begins to retrace some of his steps. And then also part of the sensitization is that the women are the homemakers, they are the home builders, and they are responsible for nurturing even the young boys. The boys, they take care of them from the beginning. So I think it is also a responsibility at the time they are bringing up the young boys to be able to humanize them, for them to see that there's no big deal, the fact that you're a man or a woman, that you can take up things that need to be done and break that chain, break that bond, break that segregation about this is what a man should do, this is what a woman should do. So sometimes those who are also bringing up these children reinforce it by continuing with the stereotypes their mothers and grandmothers used to train them. So I agree perfectly with you. It takes two to tango. Women alone cannot change the process. They need a street army of dedicated and converted men ready and willing to walk the talk of gender equality.
Just like in the case of racism in the United States. Now people are beginning to say the people who are enjoying white privilege need to stand up and speak up. And unless that is done, we won't find that kind of change.
That's the situation. And that can only come if there is some level of getting a huge number of influential men to now begin to call out those who violate women's rights, to now begin to be the face, the champion these rights. Because it is very easy where men are sitting in the evening or watching football or drinking beer to watch those programs and dismiss it as these chattering women who never get tired of disturbing the airwaves, or they went to Beijing and came back. But when the faces that are discussing this are now the so-called hardcore faces of the men who they can relate with, it becomes the message is going to be better, because although we are not looking at the messenger, we should look at the message, but most times people look at the messenger first before evaluating the message. So message can be right, but then let's get messengers whose life or who their social attributes resonate with the people that the message is directed to. I think that's a great idea.
There's an interesting perspective that you brought up, and that is starting right from the foundation.
Right.
And I remember even growing up from primary school, secondary school.
How did your mother train you? Did your mother not tell you A or B when she's cooking? She may be likely draw your sisters in and allow you to go and do something else.
Oh, yes.
Did she share the sweeping and the washing of plates, and were you not privileged
No,
to say
she
you're a
didn't.
boy?
Exactly.
So
And maybe being the only son didn't help.
I'm sure they must have spoiled you. They must have spoiled you.
So even my sisters kept me out of the kitchen.
All
So
right,
I felt food appeared by magic.
Okay.
You just willed it and it came into existence. But that is part of the problem.
Yes.
And I remember from primary school, secondary school, whenever they were announcing those who had scored the highest, you would find that there were lots of the girls who were either coming first, second, or third.
Yeah.
But somewhere along the line, you know, could it be due to societal pressure?
Yeah.
What tends to happen is they drop off.
They thin, as you begin to go higher, they begin to thin out. That's the issue of early marriage, child marriage in many instances, in many states in the Nigeria, particularly in the northern parts. You have this thinning out the young girls that are supposed to continue. When you get married at 16, 17, 18, you get into childbearing, and marriage is serious business. You are kept down. At the time you have made some friends are taking jump and entering, you are bogged down with a child, and the child cannot wait. So that's the challenge. But in some other parts of Nigeria, people are also picking up to see that education is fundamental. It's not something you can trade with marriage or any other thing. Get your education first, then marriage can come later. And we need to, make Nigerians understand it, because even the way our population is growing, it's not our interest that people should just get married at 16, 17, or 18. We have the challenges, the health challenges and social challenges associated with it. Increasing our population for that doesn't make sense, because our GDP growth, our economy is not even growing as fast as our population growth, and that's why poverty is increasing.
And maybe women have a big part to play in this. Well, we'll take a break, but when we come back, we'll be talking about executive action or some sort of affirmative action that would guarantee the place of women in decision-making processes. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I am still spending time in the studio with Eze Onyekwere, who's the Director of Center for Social Justice. And we're tackling the issue of the role of men in making sure that we have more women in decision-making processes, and what sort of policies do we need to put in place to make this happen. We're also looking at social justice. Is there a link between the restricted number of women that we have in high decision-making processes and some of the hurtful things that happen to women in our society? So earlier you were talking about, having some sort of affirmative action, and we already had one which dictated that about 30% of appointive positions should be reserved for women. We've not even lived up to that. And now maybe we're suggesting that we look at elective positions as well. So what are the challenges? What are the things that have prevented us from doing that? Is it that we're just not committed to?
We don't have any law that stipulates that. We neither also don't have a strong policy that stipulates that. It's just like something hanging from the agreements in Beijing that came down. So, for instance, there's a Federal Character Commission which is trying to see the federal character principles, how it is implemented in Nigeria. There's no equivalent. So I'm proposing that we actually have a gender and equal opportunity law enacted at the federal level and replicated in states. And part of what we should see is an Equal Opportunities Commission, which should even subsume whatever they're doing in federal character. And we will have some clauses set out in constitutional amendments or even in enabling laws to say that in any board that is going to be appointed by the federal government or state government, You provided that not less than, say, 30 or 40% of the appointees are female. Yes, you want a representative from NBA, ICANN, XYZ, you need to get them, but provided that not less than 40% of these board members are female. And I don't believe that there is any position we need to have appointed today in Nigeria that you won't find qualified females to take up the position.
Absolutely.
So you mainstream this, even in elective positions too. There's a way it could be designed in terms of proportional representation through the political parties, that you make sure that if you have 109 senators, at least you get between 35 and 40 senators to be female. So also in the House of Representatives. So also you replicate in the appointment of judges. So at the end of the day, you have a much more broader representation of the population. The national census talks about 51-49, 51 for men, 49 for women, or thereabout. But the representation is like 99 for men and virtually zero. So that's not a fair representation. And that's why I'm talking about the Gender and Equal Opportunities Bill, which should become law at the federal and at the state level, with a commission that ensures that these provisions are carried out to the letter.
Just like the Federal Character Commission.
Yes, yes.
So, but I can see how that can work in appointive positions. But when it comes to elective and all of the dynamics and complexities that are connected to that, is there any way to guarantee that?
It's possible. Between INEC and the political parties, they can sit down and designate certain constituencies to be constituencies that must produce female representatives. And it's not just like you must produce it for the next 10 years. It could be in rotation. If you come into a state, maybe Imo North, you say, okay, this time around, all the political parties, we don't care how you do it, you must field female representatives. Maybe after the next 4 or 2 terms, you move it to another zone. You know, so it is possible. It's just that whatever you want to do, sit down first, think through it, get the regulatory agency like INEC, get the political parties who are the key players. They sit down and agree on how to do it. It's not rocket science. Even in rocket science, people have gone to moon, people have gone to Mars. Rockets have gone to Mars, but humans haven't gone there. They've also gone to Venus and some other far distant planets. So
everything is doable.
It's doable.
But then a critical part of it would have to be orientation, especially, I mean, we do have to admit that we have hyper-conservative communities here in Nigeria, and some of those communities are, comprised of very powerful men.
Yeah.
So how do we get this re-education?
If there is the law enacted and there's a political will from the highest level, from the presidency to the chief judge to the speaker to the senate president, it will get done. Once the law is there, you can't run contrary to the law. If they say your constituency must field female candidates and you bring a male name, INEC says, sorry, you're not qualified. You go to court, they say, sorry, you're disqualified. So law is the command of the sovereign backed by sanctions. The command of the sovereign backed is not a plea. It's not a moral adjuration. This is what you need to do, and it's a reasonable proposition. I'm sorry, if you don't do it, you'll be sanctioned. And once it comes up, people will queue.
So, but wouldn't there be pushback from some of these lawmakers who may subscribe to such hyper-conservative views?
If the society is sensitized enough and it makes it impossible for them to do otherwise, they will absolutely have nothing to do. They will have nothing to lose, and there's no way they can. If women actually get properly organized, and you know that majority of the voters are women, and you decide to look the other way, and if INEC decides that elections wouldn't be rigged, you either do their bidding or you get voted out. They are the majority of the voters. They are the people who stay in the sun and in the rain and in the vote to vote. So I think there should be some level of sensitization on the female folk to ensure that they claim their rights. You can't simply be voting for people who don't recognize that you exist, who don't want to take care of you. And in the popular joke of the word cooperation, that you'll be shouting "co" and they will be operating. You shout "co," they'll be operating. So why don't you ask them to shout "co" so that you can operate?
So that you operate.
So it becomes cooperation. Right.
Absolutely. Well, we've been having, a trail of problems with gender-based violence, violence against women. And also something I've noticed, that a lot of men don't seem to be or realize how damaging, let's say, a violent act like rape can be on a woman, both psychologically and physically. So in the past, we've even had comedians make jokes about it, really tasteless and all of that. So do you see a link between violent acts against women and the fact that we don't have enough women making policies or creating laws? Because we saw the impact that had in Kaduna State.
Right. I see that link, because sometimes when the victims or survivors get to police stations or law enforcement agents, the way they're treated, that empathy, that sympathy, that human feeling is not there. And also, because of the difference, slight difference, there's a way a young girl will feel telling a man the details of how she was violated, and how she will feel if she saw a female face who was welcoming, like her mom, who looks like her mom, who say, "Oh, my daughter, sorry." She will be much more forthcoming to open up, knowing that she has somebody who understands, what she went through. And even seeing a male face as the person you are going to talk to, and the way he's responded, asking you questions like, "Oh, you were raped because you dressed. What were you doing out by 10 o'clock?" All those kind of, as if to say you've lost your fundamental rights to move or to, dress
the way you wish.
So these are issues that come to play when you have people not being able to pursue their cases when they are violated, or even some not being able to, you start pursuing it and then there's pressure, they have to come back. So the more female faces who are reasonable and understand the issues out there, the more likely that these matters will be taken up.
Then one of the responses we had, I referenced that a short time ago, was the castration law in Kaduna State, which has raised a lot of
that's another extreme. It's another extreme. You don't solve one problem by creating
a new one.
I don't think it makes sense. You should, in enacting a law, you should find out the mischief in the existing law and policy which had not worked, so that you can now provide a remedy to it. The remedy suppresses the mischief while advancing the remedy. So what purpose will that serve? Because the main challenge that people face is that there's that social pressure, culture of silence. There's also the lack of knowledge. People are violated, they clean up and all these things without taking medical evidence. And then there's this that don't push this case further. Your family comes in and all those things. These are the things you need to look at. How do you tackle them? Because even the stronger the punishment, the more likely that the victim will game the system and manipulate it. So the men who are ganging up to do this will also do it more. The only thing is that it will increase the price for those who want to bribe law enforcement agents or to disrupt the system.
Because you can't address that and increase the severity of punishment if you've not looked at the criminal justice system itself. What is the rate of convictions for rape cases?
And what is preventing survivors from coming forward to report, one, or when they report, from pursuing their cases to a logical conclusion, or from being able to produce
the
evidence,
lack of diligent prosecution,
or being able to produce the quality of evidence required by the court to convict the person who is accused. These are the issues that the law should. But the idea that everything, death penalty if it's under 14, castration, I mean, come on, this is Stone Age. We are discussing the year 2021. This is Stone Age. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me. It's not reasonable. I would have, for instance, I had expected them to set up a sexual and gender-based response team, like they have in Lagos, where you have lawyers, doctors, psychologists, priests, and all kinds of people who come together with the police, that once a case is reported, you follow it up from different angles. Doctors are looking at the issues, the medical evidence, lawyers are gathering, people are counseling the woman, she's giving a safe haven, maybe take her away from the environment for some time, she's a victim of domestic violence. So you make collecting evidence very easy. It's a one-stop shop. You get in there, you see a fellow woman who will console you, who will take you into confidence, and you feel free to talk to them. They could be lawyers, there could be doctors. So what I'm saying, that's the kind of scenario I expect to be created in places like Kaduna, so that the evidence will be there, and then you secure more convictions. 7 years imprisonment, 10 years, 20, life imprisonment or whatever is there is already good enough, if you ask me. It's not about whether you put the man to death. It doesn't solve problems.
Well, that has been quite enlightening, and it's been a pleasure having you here to discuss these critical issues.
My pleasure too. Thank you.
And we will be right back. Don't go away. It's always interesting listening to Eze Onyekwere, the director of the Center for Social Justice. And he raised quite a few issues as to how we can make sure that women have access to justice and how we can have more of them when we come to planning the future of our country. After all, they make up half of our population. And that's it on Exclusive Interview for today. Until we come your way again next time, thanks for stopping by.